There is no substitute for applied knowledge, period. The U.S. Supreme Court has also described what it meant by subject to the jurisdiction, and it means physically present somewhere within the country or what they call territory of the nation, rather than the statutory United States at the time of birth or naturalization. The amendment in clear words and I should blow that up, it's so small. The amendment in clear words and in manifest intent includes the children born within the territory of the United States of all other persons of whatever race or color domiciled within the United States. Every citizen or subject of another country, while domiciled here, the country, not the statutory United States, is within the allegiance and the protection, and consequently subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, the constitutionally created United States. His allegiance to the United States is direct and immediate, and although but local and temporary, continuing only so long as he remains within our territory. Is yet, in the words of Lord Coke in Calvin's case 7 Coke 6a, strong enough to make a natural subject, for if he hath issue here, that issue is a natural born subject, and his child, as said by Mr. Biney in his essay before quoted, if born in the country, is as much a citizen as the natural born children of a citizen. And by operation of the same principle, it can hardly be denied that an alien is completely subject to the political jurisdiction of the country in which he resides, seeing that, as said by Mr. Webster when Secretary of State in his report to the President on Thrasher's case in 1851, and since repeated by this court, independently of a residence with intentions to continue such residence, independently of any domiciliation, independently of the taking of any oath of allegiance or of renouncing any former allegiances, it is well known that by the public law an alien or a stranger born for so long a time as he continues within the dominions of a foreign government owes obedience to the laws of that government, and may be punished for treason or other crimes as a native-born subject might be, unless his case is varied by some treaty stipulation. Executive Document H.R. number 10, First Session, 32D Congress, page 4, 6 Webster's work, 526, U.S. versus Carlisle, 16 Wall, 147, 155, and Calvin's case, 7 Coke, 6A, Ellesmer, Postanati, Postnati, 63, 1 Hale, PC, 62, 4th Black Commentary, 7492, United States versus Wong Kim Art, 169 U.S. 649, 18 S period CT period 456, 42 L period ED 890, 1898. The case below is talking about constitutional and not statutory citizens or citizenship. As the mind cannot conceive an army without the men to compose it, on the face of the Constitution, the objection that it does not give power to provide for such men would seem to be too frivolous for further notice. It is said, however, that since under the Constitution as originally framed, state citizenship was primary and United States citizenship, but derivative and dependent thereon, therefore the power conferred upon Congress to raise armies was only conterminous with United States citizenship and could not be exerted so as to cause that citizenship to lose its dependent character and dominate state citizenship. But the position simply denies to Congress the power to raise armies which the Constitution gives. That power, by the very terms of the Constitution being delegated, is supreme, Article 6. In truth, the connection simply assails the wisdom of the framers of the Constitution in conferring authority on Congress and in not retaining it as it was under the Confederation in the several states. Avere versus United States, 245 U.S. 366. This case was held in 1918. Below are a few additional case sites that prove that those who are not domiciled in a constitutional state of the Union, but domiciled somewhere in the United States, such as those domiciled on federal territories in the District of Criminals, District of Columbia, are statutory and not constitutional citizens. Citizens of the District of Columbia were not granted the privileges of litigating in the federal courts on the ground of diversity of citizenship. Possibly no better reason for this fact exists than such citizens were not thought of when the Judiciary Article 3 of the Federal Constitution was drafted. Citizens of the United States, Title 28, 3002, 15A, were also not thought of, but in any event, a citizen of the United States, the Federal Corporation, Title 28, 3002, 15A, who is not a citizen of any state, is not within the language of the Federal Constitution. Peniel versus Roanoke, 252 F period 910 914. There are then, under our Republican form of government, I just fucking love reading that, Republican form of government. You know, as you listen to the TV day in and day out, and the fucking radio and the war machine running around saying we must institute democracy amongst these other nations. We must support our democracy. Everybody must support the democracy. I just love reading these cases where they clearly articulate the Republican form of government guaranteed to us forever, okay? There are then, under our Republican form of government, two classes of citizen. One of the United States, which is a constitutional state citizen, constitutionally protected, a member of the Union of States, right? Not dwelling within a federal territory, and one of the state. One class of citizenship may exist in a person without the other, as in the case of a resident of the District of Columbia. But both classes usually exist in the same person. Gardena versus Board of Registers, 160 Alabama 155. Below is a table comparing the two contexts to make the difference perfectly clear. We will build on these distinctions throughout the remainder of this pamphlet. Without you guys seeing this, it's not going to make any sense. All right. Let me think about this for a second. I think I've got a way that this will make sense to you guys. Characteristic. Status of person holding this status. A statutory citizen or resident is identifying and known as artificial being or human being. All these citizens are public officers in the government partaking of government franchises, okay? That would be the statutory citizen. That would be who Congress makes laws for. That would be who the legislator makes laws for. Is artificial being or human beings or man. All these citizens are public officers or hold public office in the government partaking of governmental franchises. Okay. Now we're going to shift gears. And we're going to go over to the constitutional aspect. The constitutionally protected man and woman. Okay. Constitutional citizen or resident, okay, and I don't like the word resident because I understand the connotation that the government infers when you use resident, inhabitant, and so forth. So the constitutionally protected man is only and not artificial entities or corporations. See Insurance Co. versus New Orleans, 13 Fed Case 67 CCDLA 1870, and Orient Inns Co. versus Daggs 172 U.S. 557, 561, 1869, and Paul versus Virginia, 75 U.S. 8 Wall, 168, 1869, and Selvor, Bates and Co. versus Walsh, 226 U.S. 112, 126, 1912, and Barra College versus Kentucky, 211 U.S. 45, 1908, and Liberty Warehouse Co. versus Tobacco Growers, 276 U.S. 71, 89, 1928, and Grosjean versus American Press Co., 297 U.S. 233, 244, 1936. Okay. The characteristic of a statutory citizen or resident belonging to the District of Criminals, the nature of this status is legal status under statutory civil law, Roman civil law, okay? And then the distinction would be your constitutional status, the one where you want to be, is the political status under the Constitution, okay? Being one of the members of the Union of States. Status created by statutory persons, which are subject to Congress and the legislation passed, okay, are congressional grant by statute public rights or privileges, okay? Now, on the obverse spectrum of that, the constitutional aspect is we the people in the Constitution. Status is, in the eyes of the statutory, a privilege or franchise, okay? It's a grant of immunities. It's a privilege. Anytime that you hear about privileges, understand that those privileges are granted by men, and that means they can take them away. That is not the status that you wish to have, okay? Because you are not an officer of the government. You are not receiving a paycheck from the government, and thus you don't have any privileges and you don't belong to a franchise, okay? Now, on the obverse spectrum of that, the status is a right that cannot be taken away once granted, you know, a constitutionally protected man or woman. A privilege for permanent residents who apply for it, but not for those who already have it. Type of jurisdiction created. In the statutory form, which would mean that you're an officer subject to the statutory legislation and acts and provisions created by Congress and the legislative, would be legislative statutory jurisdiction. On the obverse side of that spectrum would be the political jurisdiction, where you invoke the Constitution. You are protected as a state national. You invoke the state constitution. On the federal level, you can invoke the protections of the federal Constitution that are strictly put in place to protect your unalienable rights. Jurisdiction called, in the statutory sense, would be subject to its jurisdiction in Title 26 CFR subsection 1.1-1C. On the obverse spectrum of that would be the jurisdiction called would be the subject to the jurisdiction in the 14th Amendment. That would be on the constitutional side of things. Citizen defined in Title 8 USC subsection 1401, Title 26 CFR subsection 1.1-1C, Title 26 CFR subsection 31.3121-1E, and Title 8 USC subsection 1101A22A would all classify under U.S. citizen and be governed statutorily, okay? Now, the obverse spectrum of that, obviously, in the 14th Amendment, the Constitution, citizen defined in the 14th Amendment, Section 1, the first sentence, all right, clearly outlines it, and also Title 8 USC subsection 1101A21, owing a permanent allegiance to the state, all right? Domicile located in the federal statutory state territory as defined in Title 4 USC subsection 110D, which means the state of Nebraska, state of Texas, state of California, state of Utah, so on and so forth, are all subsidiary corporations of Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, District of Criminals, Title 28, 3002, 15A, B, and C, which would make you subject to the statutory civil law. Okay? But domicile located in the state of the unions invokes the Constitution and the protection thereof, as used in the Constitution. Okay? A U.S. person as defined in Title 26 U.S.C. subsection 7701A30 is a statutory civil status, okay? And that does not apply to the constitutional status, okay? The political status that you have. May lawfully be issued a social security number or taxpayer identification number. That is the civil statutory side. That is the legislative side of Congress and the legislators, okay? That's where the social security number and implication comes into play. And it is not protected by the Constitution on the constitutional side, politically speaking. So see why it is illegal for me to request or use a taxpayer identification number, because you're not an officer of the United States, the District of Columbia, the District of Criminals. You don't reside in a territory. Human beings called. If you're identifying as a U.S. citizen, a citizen of the United States under Title 28, 3002, 15A, a federal corporation, or national and citizen of the United States, these are all civil statutorily defined by Congress and the legislator. He who creates is master. They created these entities, and if you're using these entities, you're subjecting yourself to the civil law, okay? But man is a non-resident, non-person, national, state national, see Title 8 U.S.C. subsection 1101A21, owing a permanent allegiance to the state, okay? American citizen, see 1 Stat 477, citizen of the United States under the Federal Constitution of America, see 1 Stat 477, and citizen of the United States as defined by the Federal Constitution, the organic Federal Constitution, all right? Two very separate and distinguished jurisdictions. Resident alien defined in Title 8 U.S.C. subsection 1101A3 is a civil statutory person belonging to the legislative branch in Congress as far as Title 28, 3002, 15A, B, and C, a federal corporation is concerned. Title 26 U.S.C. subsection 701B1A also affirms that this status is with the federal corporation in Washington, D.C. Title 26 CFR subsection 1.1441-1C3I is also subject to civil statutory law. Resident alien defined in the Constitution on the political side of it is not defined. Sovereign. There is no sovereign in the civil political arena. In the civil statutory code and provisions, there is no such thing as a sovereign. They are subject citizens, okay? Sovereign, as far as your political status goes, is clearly articulated and defined and protected within the Constitution, both state and federal, so long as you are a state national and have an allegiance to that state, right? And that state would be, for example, Indiana, Arizona, Nebraska, Utah, but remind you that that is not state of Nebraska, it's just Nebraska in and of itself, okay? Which is a foreign sovereign nation. It's its own country versus state of Nebraska, which is a subsidiary corporation of Washington, D.C., okay? Characteristics. Rights protected by statutory citizens or residents, which again is under the civil statutory enactments of Congress. It's enactments of Congress, privileges, not rights. Anytime that they're saying you have privileges, know that they're referring to you being underneath the civil statutory authority and being without your rights intact, okay? Rights protected by the Constitution of the United States, Bill of Rights, state constitutions, okay, is what you seek to invoke because you're a natural man with unalienable rights, not subject to the civil statutory authority of Congress, its enactments, and the legislator, okay? Rights protected by the United States Constitution. In the statutory authority, the civil statutory realm, Title 28, 3002, 15A, a federal corporation, you have no rights, only legislative privileges. Now, rights protected by the United States Constitution, on the constitutional aspect of things, you absolutely have in the political side, invoking the Constitution, all right? Not being a statutory U.S. citizen as defined. Rights protected by state constitutions are not civilly enforced, okay? That's why the judges are saying in the courtroom when they're enacting under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, they're in a completely different jurisdiction. That's why they're telling you that bringing up the Constitution in this court will not be had. If you bring it up anymore, we're going to put you in contempt of court, because they're presuming and assuming that you are of a civil statutory status, okay? That you are dwelling or domiciled within a federal territory or enclave, part of the military occupation and subject thereto, okay? Rights protected by state constitution only applies in the political jurisdiction where you are a member of the Union of States, okay? And you're protected by that Constitution, invoking that Constitution, changing the jurisdiction of the court. Rights are, and it should properly say, well, let's just get into it. Revocable at the whim of Congress by legislative enactment and constitutional privileges. Okay, so this realistically should have said privileges are, or civil rights are, revocable at the whim of Congress by legislative enactment and constitute privileges, okay? But rights on the political side, on invoking the protection of the Constitution, being a Union state member, owing your political allegiance to the state, are unalienable, and they're protected by the Constitution. And you can invoke Article 1, Section 9, as well as Article 1, Section 10 to affirm that, okay? They're unalienable rights, and they're retained by we, the people. Rights are surrendered by, in the civil statutory venue, no rights are surrendered. They are waived, okay? They are contracted, you contract out of your rights. Rights are surrendered by, in the political side of this, incorrectly declaring yourself to be a statutory U.S. citizen. Okay, that's how you waive your rights, or you surrender them, if you will, is by incorrectly declaring yourself to be a statutory U.S. citizen. Or 2, accepting any government benefit and thereby waiving sovereign immunity pursuant to Title 28 U.S.C. subsection 1605 A2. That's how you can do it, all right? Definition of United States, upon which term citizen of the United States depends from previous section. United States, Title 28, 3002, 15A, which is identified as a federal corporation, its federal enclave, its territories, the District of Columbia, Samoa, Outer Minor-Lying Islands, Puerto Rico, Guam, okay? That is the civil statutory status that is combined with the United States under Title 28, 3002, 15A, okay? Now, the United States that is protected with the constitutions is the United States of America, okay? Allegiance is to the government of the United States, statutorily speaking, your pagan false god. If you have an allegiance to Title 28, 3002-15A, statutorily defined, you are a U.S. citizen or citizen. You have no rights, only privileges. We tell you when to walk, when to jump, how to hop, when you can fly, when you can die, all that good shit, all right? And that's because you've subjected yourself to a federal territory under military occupation, and you have waived your rights, okay, your unalienable rights and the protections granted by the Constitution. You have abandoned your state citizenship, okay? Allegiance is to the people in states of the Union, okay? This is the constitutional political side of things. Your neighbors, love your neighbor, Exodus 20:12 through 17, and Galatians 5:14. Relationship to national government. National government in the statutory realm, Title 28, 3002-15A, its federal enclaves and territories, is domestic, okay? But your relationship to national government, as far as your political sovereignty is concerned, under the protections and invoking the Constitution as a state national, is foreign. So see, sovereign equals foreign, all right? Tax status. If you declare yourself to be a U.S. citizen, statutorily speaking, U.S. citizens, as defined in Title 26 CFR subsection 1.1-1C, and U.S. persons under Title 26 U.S.C. subsection 7701A30 are civilly defined through statute as to being owing an allegiance to the federal corporation and thus liable for taxes, okay? They're U.S. citizens. However, a tax status does not exist for the non-resident, non-person if exclusively private and not a public officer or holding public office. A non-resident alien, as defined in Title 26 U.S.C. subsection 7701B1B, if a public officer and therefore individual, all right? File which federal tax form? If you are a U.S. citizen, you'll find yourself filing the tax form 1040. However, if you are not a U.S. citizen, the IRS form 1040-NR, non-resident, without a TIN-SSN, Social Security number, would be the form that you would use. Protected by Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, FSIA, as an instrumentality of a foreign state. See Title 28 U.S.C. subsection 1602 through 1611. On the statutory side of things, you don't have that. You only have the protection of the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, FSIA, as an instrumentality of a foreign state. In the political side of things, where you're a state national owing a permanent allegiance to the state, where you are protected by the state constitution, okay? A stateless person is in federal court. See definition of state found in Title 28 U.S.C. subsection 1332E. Statutorily speaking, does not exist. But on the political side, as states of the Union are not states within the meaning of Title 28 U.S.C. subsection 1332E, and therefore is a yes. Can vote in state elections. As a voter, you are subjected, as a voter, you are agreeing to be a U.S. citizen subject to the Congress and legislative edicts, okay? You don't have any rights. You have privileges and immunities that can be taken away at any fucking time because they don't like the way you look, all right? Now, the United States of America is very unique. This is the one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, that you can be an elector. As an elector who very carefully fills out the voter registration, okay, you can be an elector and not a voter, okay? Allegiance directed at, if you have an allegiance to the federal state, you know, state of Nebraska, state of Arizona, state of confusion, which is a federal corporation and a franchisee of the District of Columbia, Title 28, 3002-15A, federal corporation form of government, that runs it, okay? Then you are defined by having to follow the edicts, again, of statutory civil law, all right, created by legislative acts in Congress. However, your allegiance directed at constitutional state, which is all sovereign people within the territory, then the only law that applies to you is do no harm and trespass not against your fellow brothers and sisters, and honor the contracts you enter into, provide remedy. That's it. Statutory citizens of the United States is a corporate franchise. The federal regulations prove who the U.S. citizen or citizens of the United States is that Congress has jurisdiction over. It is a corporation. Title 46 CFR subsection 356.5, Affidavit of U.S. citizen or citizenship. CFR updates authorities U.S. Code subsection 356.5, Affidavit of U.S. citizenship. A. In order to establish that a corporation or other entity is a citizen of the United States within the meaning of Section 2C of the 1916 Act, or where applicable Section 2B of the 1916 Act, the form of affidavit is hereby prescribed for execution in behalf of the owner, character, mortgagee, or mortgage trustee of a fishing industry vessel. Such affidavit must include information required of parent corporations and other stockholders whose stock ownership is being relied upon to establish that the requisite ownership in the entity is owned by and vested in citizens of the United States. A certified copy of the Articles of Incorporation and bylaws or comparable corporate documents must be submitted along with the executed affidavit. B. This affidavit form set forth in paragraph D of this section may be modified to conform to the requirements of vessel owners, mortgagees, or mortgage trustees in various forms such as partnerships, limited liability companies, etc. A copy of an affidavit of U.S. citizenship modified appropriately for limited liability companies, partnerships, limited and general, and other entities is available on MARAD's internet homepage at http://www.marad.dot.gov. Okay. C. As indicated in subsection 356.17, in order to renew annually the fishery endorsement on a fishing industry vessel, the owner must submit annually to the Citizenship Approval Officer evidence of U.S. citizenship within the meaning of Section 2C of the 1916 Act of 46 APP U.S. C. 12102C. And D. The prescribed form of affidavit of U.S. citizenship is as follows. State of, county of, social security number, I, name of, resident address, being duly sworn to pose and say that I am the title of office or offices held of, name of corporation, a corporation organized and existing under the laws of the state of, hereinafter called the corporation, with offices at business address, and evidence of which incorporation a certified copy of the Articles of or Certificate of Incorporation of Association is filed herewith, or has been filed together with a certified copy of the corporate bylaws, evidence of continuing U.S. citizenship status, including amendments to said articles or certificate and bylaws, should be filed within 45 days of the annual documentation renewal date for vessel owners. Other parties required to provide evidence of U.S. citizenship status must file within 30 days after the annual meeting of the stockholders, or annually within 30 days after the original affidavit if there has been no meeting of the stockholders prior to that time. 2. That I am authorized by and in behalf of the corporation to execute and deliver this affidavit of U.S. citizenship. 3. that the names of the chief executive officers, by whatever title, the chairman of the board of directors, all vice presidents, or other individuals who are authorized to act in the absence of or disability of the chief executive officer or chairman of the board of directors and the directors of the corporation are as follows. Footnote: offices that are currently vacant should be noted when listing officers and directors in the affidavit. Notice the officers of the corporation who files the above must have a social security number, which in turn functions as a license to represent a public office in the national but not federal government. The social security number is what the Federal Trade Commission calls a franchise mark. The citizen of the United States they are referring to in the above regulations can only mean a statutory citizen. Constitutional citizens include only human beings, man, according to the U.S. Supreme Court. Citizens of the United States within the meaning of this amendment must be natural and not artificial persons. A corporate body is not a citizen of the United States. 14 Insurance Co. versus New Orleans, 13 Fed Case 67 CCDLA 1870, not being citizens of the United States, corporation accordingly have been declared unable to claim the protection of that clause of the 14th Amendment, which secure the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States against abridgment or impairment by the law of the state. Orient Inc. Co. versus Daggs, 172 U.S. 557-561, 1869. This conclusion was in harmony with the earlier holding in Paul versus Virginia, 75 U.S. 8 Wall, 168, 1869, to the effect that corporations were not within the scope of the Privileges and Immunities Clause of the state citizenship set out in Article 4, Section 2. See also Selvor Bates and Co. versus Walsh, 226 U.S. 112, 126, 1912. Barra College versus Kentucky, 211 U.S. 45, 1908. Liberty Warehouse Co. versus Tobacco Growers, 276 U.S. 71, 89, 1928. And Grosjean versus American Press Co., 297 U.S. 233, 244, 1936. Annotated 14th Amendment Congressional Research Services. You are not a statutory citizen under the Internal Revenue Code. And that's where we'll start when we continue on.